3-ish. I'll call the meeting to order. Yeah, let me use the agenda. I have a file down here myself. Call for one that we delivered. I did not hear from anyone regarding their intention not to attend. But we are missing a couple of people, so perhaps they're on a little bit late. And I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, although on Tad's behalf, I'm having a little difficulty getting minutes written up. So perhaps we should add to the agenda the conscription of a secretary, which we managed to avoid at first, because staff was going to take care of that.
Well, we can, but not this week. This week was one of those weeks where I had a convergence of a whole bunch of different events.
So do you want to continue to take care of the minutes?
Yep, but they're going to become very
abbreviated?
I was going to say anorexic.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Right.
All those in favor? Okay. We do, however, have minutes from the September 3rd meeting, which we received last meeting, and then emailed a copy in the meantime. So I assume at this point everybody's had a chance to take a look at those. Diane, why don't you drag a chair up here?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
There's still one.
Copy of the agenda on this table here. Does anybody have any?
I think there was just one change that I'm from Wisconsin.
Did I make that? I think I made that change.
Did you make that
Email
change?
one. Yeah. That was embarrassing. I don't know why Illinois was on my mind.
Indiana.
Indiana, was it Indiana?
Wisconsin.
Any other items? Okay. I had a couple of things, minor in nature, but that's me. Page 3, second paragraph, Champagne is incorrectly spelled.
Okay.
And also at the end of that same paragraph, the sentence doesn't stop. It says, extended nearly to the.
Sentence. Okay.
And also on page 4, third paragraph from the bottom, second to the last sentence, it says Mr. Danilick, why? We don't know, but I think it means Mr. Danilick asked why.
Yes.
Just a word omission. So, no substantive changes, just details. We're all set with that. I have a motion, please.
Move to approve the minutes of 9/3.
Seconded. I want to vote because I wasn't here for that meeting.
All those in favor? Oh, yeah. That's
I got abstain.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's 2 abstentions?
3.
Okay.
Well, then Dorothy's, because your name is there, isn't attending.
Is this the last one?
No, this is
No, the one before that.
the third one before.
Then I was here and I did vote. Sorry.
That's okay.
Struck from the record.
Strike me, but not
So
me.
you were not here. Neither was Dan. Dan was here.
No, we're not with this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good.
Okay. Now the hard part's done. Now we need to look at language.
No, you can sit.
Okay, the last time we met, we looked at some proposed language that I had thrown in your direction. And as we went through the various areas, we made some suggestions. And in the meantime, between last meeting and now, I have emailed to all of you the original plus with italics, the suggested changes, some of which were simple thing like 20,000 square feet, and others were just ideas that we would need to develop some language around. So I have copies of what you were emailed in case you chose.
So I have it.
have it, you don't need it, because nothing's changed since.
Same thing as the last meeting, Donna?
Well, with the exception of the italicized
Okay.
additions.
Yep.
Same as my email, but not as the last meeting.
Had you emailed this to me, Donna? No, seemed done.
I believe so.
I don't think I got it either, Donna.
Okay, well, then, let me see if I can amend my
I already have this.
list.
I don't know why I'm fussing.
No, you should have gotten it. I'll do a test email sometime in the next week or so. And if I,
So, you said you emailed this out? When did you email this out?
What was the date?
A couple of weeks ago.
it was, basically a week or so, a week, I'll say a week ago. I think it was a week ago yesterday.
Because you sent out 2 emails that day. One
Yes,
you said was
I found
incorrect,
one.
and then you-
Right, at first I sent the wrong file, then I sent the right file.
Right.
Okay,
My thought was, geez, I'm crow, that was.
so, all right, well, you have a copy now, we'll straighten that out and see what the problem is. Where we left off at the last meeting, we had not had a chance to look at the very last piece, which was what I had designated as M5, or Community Commercial Village. I'm going to suggest that maybe we take a look at that and then go back to the beginning and look at the comments that we had made. And Tad, do you have maps for us?
I have, yeah, the question is always how to do this, because it's something that you can't look at from afar. You have to plow it around. So,
That was why I wanted.
Put it on the
individual
steps
maps.
over there.
well, we can put it right here. I will put it up here.
Even if it gives us a general idea of what the area looks like.
Pretty, I need to know what I just did. Oh, there's my mounting material.
Careful, don't knock that camera.
You're looking good, Dan.
Good from far, but far from looking good, right?
Phone cord. All right, now let's see. Whoa, I think we should go the other way. This side, take that side. This pretty much shows a quarter. Oh, nice. Isn't that good? This is a composite map. The corridor in question is essentially Route 111. Starting at the Bedford line and proceeding down to Limerick Road. And there's a lot of data on here, and a lot of ground cover, so I can't separate out the vegetation from the buildings, because I don't have that capability. This is a raster database, so. But here is essentially the Bedford line right here, and all the lot lines for all the properties are all on here, as are the contours, and also floodplain, any floodplains or streams, and all the streams didn't come through. But essentially, from this side on down, we start, and Mike got would view this place right here, and proceed down. This is the intersection of New and Old Alfred Road. This is the truck place. We have Agway across the street. We basically pretty much have businesses all the way down through here. Small businesses, counting, lobster. Then we, beg your pardon?
St. Louis.
Yep, St. Or's. Then the only other one that's kind of not within the immediate vicinity, Route 111 is the Flames right here. And, but it's within that 1,000 feet. Now we have to remember there's a 1,000-foot corridor currently in the zoning map that proceeds along through here. In some cases, you know, obviously that intrudes significantly into residential residential areas, what are existing residences. For instance, along the old Alfred Road, right through here, we have all pretty much residences and through here, up to this point right here, the trucking is. And this is going to be realigned at some point too, by the way. DOT will realign it. It's been in the consensus for work for what, the last 2 years or 3 years? It keeps getting pushed back, pushed back, pushed back. And actually, they haven't completed final design on it yet, but the concept design is there. I don't know what kind of negotiations they've completed with these folks, but they're gonna have to take land. So it's gonna be, it's gonna improve that intersection, but it's gonna cause some disruption to this business in particular.
You gonna put in a rotary?
No. That'd be too much fun.
No, but there won't be two, there won't, right
Won't
now
tie
they can
into
come out
the
two
brand new
ways, and there
road.
won't be two anymore.
Yeah, it's basically, this is gonna tie into New Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have this ridiculous intersection. And as you know, they are planning to put in the rumble strip and the additional widening in through there as well, all the way down to basically Phil Laver's place. No, just to Phil Laver's place. Hill Road is a different, it's part of the same work order, but it's different. It's not the expansion of the road surface.
They want to totally go into the CMP line.
Well, it's really to Phil's place, right to here. Yeah, they might take it to CMP because that's a logical break right there. But there's really no other turning movement except for, that stays Mill, right?
Yeah.
That stays Mill, right? Juice Mill, sorry, Juice Mill. So, this is basically what we have right now, is we have some businesses that, you know, are both of small size and also of there's some that are of good size. The Agway has a fairly good size complement of buildings in there. The potential to do additional development in through here is limited by the residential in through here. However, we do have certain parcels that do have some potential. This parcel right here has a lot of potential. It's actually not bad land. As you can see, from topo, it slopes off pretty dramatically over here. In fact, this is all a sort of a low area that bowls down and some good steep slopes. In fact, Ledgewood was, geez, where is it now? I can't even find it. That's Rocky Lane. That's Rocky Lane. Ledgecliff, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's pretty much opposite Drew's Mills.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was that house.
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
this house right here, you can barely see it. This
Just
is,
as open here.
yeah, that's where there's, no, there was a subdivision that's then gone away. But, I mean, we do have potential in this particular, this area and through here. This is residential, there's not much chance there. Here, this is Dustin's right in here. He's actually got a fairly good sized plot of land. This is Lavi's land up through here, currently used for earth moving, and then his gravel pit is actually on the Biddeford side.
You've got the trailer parks in there too.
We have the trailer parks smack dab right in the middle. Here they are right here. 1, 2, yeah. And pretty much all those kids go to our school.
Yeah, one of them's for sale.
One of them is for sale. They do produce revenue. It's not, nobody's gonna flip it to put in a single family home or anything there, so. What the future is of that, we'd have to get some real pressure in here for that to discontinue, for the owners to want to sell to something else, because that is a revenue producer for them.
What about the land behind Agway?
The land behind Agway is good. Unfortunately, most of it's in Biddeford.
Yeah, they have one.
There's the line.
Okay.
I should have beefed up that line.
Yeah. So
This is the line.
Not a lot of it, okay.
No, it's not locked. They've got, you know, they've got fill area in here, and then it gets very wet back in this area here. It's, the area actually back here is pretty good, but it's on the other side of the property line. But that doesn't mean they couldn't pump through. Remember also, this is a CMP line through here probably remember that when we went and looked at Phil's place. Actually, I was looking at the CUP lines through there.
Well, no, because we didn't cross into Bedford, we wouldn't allow us to
You
cross
did.
into Bedford.
We did.
We reported.
Oops, that was on recording too, yeah, thanks. Yeah, we did proceed over, but, that's pretty much the corridor as it is right now. Now, as we continue down, this you'll recognize this as the, what has been, in the past, from what I can tell from the minutes, that's the dividing line, that's kind of like the battleground area. Shall this district go to this or not? Right now, it does not. It ends right at Phil's land over here. But the other thing is that right now, we also have, right here is Kate's. This area in here is Kate's butter. And so a lot of this area now has been cleared, and the actual building is right in here. And of course, this building's no longer there for some reason.
Somebody took it.
Somebody stole it in the middle of the night. It's, yeah, aliens. Because it landed over here. So we have, you can see the amount of lands we have out here. There's huge amounts of lands out here. Some areas of very wet areas in through here, and not terribly accurate in relation to the contours. I'm not sure they really exist as they're shown. But in through here, we have some pockets of development or developable areas. But we have residences, we have more residential on this side and more business on that side until we get down to
The development is going to be eventually over here too, right?
that's where eventually it is.
Yeah.
So the issue is, what's the future of this area? What is the future? Some of it's already been dictated by the existing development pattern, but depending on what pressure comes on, that can change very rapidly. As we saw what happened on the other side of Bedford when Bedford Crossing came in, there was pretty much the same pattern was on that side of the boundary until that development came in. And some people saw some major changes to the land, and some wish they had, but didn't. What Bedford does off of Andrews Road and the old dump.
You say that out.
That's actually kind of off. It's off, yeah, it's down, it's actually off here. Here it is, right here. Here's Andrews Road right there. And it goes, that's the limit of my map, and aerial that I can get to. So, it's very close. The interesting thing is we have sewer right to there. So, we have three-phase power all the way to Kate's now. We have sewer to there.
So we'll go to
Just about the Andrews Road.
Oh, I didn't realize it came
Yeah, I think it went that far. It might be just a bit of, but they had intention.
It's just a bit of a crossing, it doesn't go up there.
Doesn't go up there?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's on their plans, it's on their CIP to extend that.
Yeah, but it has not happened.
It has not happened.
No.
Yeah, Greg was a little fuzzy on that. Okay, so, also the issue of gas is of course an issue. Because Market Basket and Willis really wants the gas to come across the turnpike. Gas cannot come across the turnpike right now because of the costs involved in burrowing underneath the turnpike. Essentially, FERC does not relish the concept of gas lines, high-pressure gas lines being hung under bridges. They want it in-ground. So consequently, can't hang it across the overpass, have to basically go underneath the turnpike. Unitil has the franchise agreement for this area, and they are not, at this point, not really willing to they don't see the expense, the potential for the expense. They don't see a return on the expense, let's put it that way. Although, quite frankly, two things could be factors in that. Number one is, right now, Dayton, Sand and Gravel, which is down to Goodwin's Mills, down to that away, about a mile and a half away. Their operation, they want to shift their operation over to natural gas. And they're desperately in search of that, a supplier. And number two, we have Maritimes, right through here. and Maritime's there. However, the cost of a depressurization facility, because it's high pressure gas, you have to lower the pressure to put it into a service line. No different than you do with a high voltage power lines through there, is estimated to be about $2 million. So that's,
They told Kate's going to that.
they actually started off at 500,000 when push came to shove, it went up to 2 million. So we had the battle over gas lines. In terms of any of those, if you had gas and sewer up here, it would be a dynamic game changer in this particular area. And how driven that will be will depend on what Biddeford, in a sense, what Biddeford is going to do here. What we do, I'm not so sure. We have the land right now where the demand exists for that kind of infrastructure extension in Arundel without some other impetus from here. Unless Kate's decides to triple operations and somebody else wants to move in next to Kate's. Remember that our agricultural demonstration facility regulations apply anywhere in the RR4 district. So if there was a copycat to Kate's, Land O'Lakes, they certainly would want to probably be along this corridor as well, and they would have to negotiate with property owners to do it. And certainly anywhere in here, there are certain parcels that would actually work. Although quite frankly, folks, at the same time, we have the same problem along here that we have elsewhere in Arundel. We don't have a wetland problem as much through here. We have a ledge problem. This is all, yeah, that's all part of the Biddeford Pluton. It's all granite, and it's very dense granite. You probably all remember what it looked like watching Home Depot building. So, same material.
Yeah, the ledge ends just about at Kate's.
Yes,
And
yeah.
then once you go down that hill, then
Yep.
it's.
This is the hill right here, and then it shifts dramatically.
Yeah.
Then we start getting into the famous Arundel saltwater plume, which has been suggested to be used for aquaculture purposes. But I don't think that would work. So, that was an ocean over here. But one never knows. That's pretty much a rundown of our conditions in here. Infrastructure limitations, a lot of small development limitations, still some good chunks of land that exist that are open, especially down to the power lines, that have potential. Gradient isn't too bad here. This is bad. Yeah,
We walked that site with Phil a few years ago.
well, it drops really. I mean, you can see the contours here. This is a giant bowl that's right here. Yeah, that's a filling problem. But this area up in here is not. It's actually fairly decent land. The issue is ledge. So if you can find uses that don't have a problem with ledge, like this, or other uses, certainly this area does have development potential in through here. The question is, what kind of development potential, and do we want to limit it? Do we want to encourage something larger than our current 15,000 square feet? Because very honestly, this contains the same, currently, the CCN is the same ordinance as the CCS. We had the community, commercial scale, small scale development. Northern section and the southern section was the southern part of Route 1. Very honestly, the planning board has not really tackled this issue yet. That's next on their agenda. Once they get through the details on the DD2, they need to address this issue. I don't think right now they have any real preconceptions about this, except probably to allow for larger uses, larger scale uses, because quite frankly, we do have some larger pieces of land here, which that might be a potential. And through here, no. This is limited by the size of the lots, by the existing infrastructure, but mainly by the lots and the proximity of existing residential. For instance, this is all residential in through here. Our depth here is what? 300 feet. So
Well,
we have a very narrow strip through this area on this side.
In the DB1, it was described as, by the planning board, as small to medium, which change medium to 20,000 square feet. The original language for CCN is small to medium. So if medium is also changed here to 20,000 square feet, that makes that consistent, which would make sense because they do have some similarities.
Yeah, they do.
And that would allow for some, larger than currently allowed for businesses in those larger plots of land.
Correct. At the same time, I think this is a little different because we have in the DB1, or the C, but in DB1, we have more small lots than we have large lots, and that's by design. It's only 350 feet deep at those places where we actually extend the line out. It's not governed by the back property lines. This one, I think we're looking at all district. I don't know if this really makes sense to do that kind of horizontal stratification when you're doing that on Route 1 and DB1 and 2. I think this has got to be all one district, because right now it is all one district.
Well, yeah, no, I
It goes
agree.
right back to the property line, it's right to here. This one, it ends right here at Lattice facility right here. Which is actually kind of problematic because that makes him non-conforming. Everything he's doing out there is non-conforming. Even though he was there before zoning was here, so. It's not allowed.
It's an allowed.
It's a legally non-conforming, but he has to come for a license every 3 years.
Now, just for an idea of comparison, how big is that agway building? So we can kind of get an idea of.
That ag was about 10,000, I think. The scale is a funky scale, by the way. It's a little under 10,000. So,
So we'd be looking at double that roughly, no more,
yeah.
at the maximum.
Yep. Yeah, that would be double that. And then we have, and that's pretty much, aside from Kate's, that's about the big size. And if you look at Kate's, besides its mass, more of Kate's is its height and its breadth. Kate's is only 17,000 square feet. 17,008, sorry, it's almost 18,000. That's with the overhangs. So, that's 20,000 isn't unreasonable.
But this is not an area where we would want, small stuff like we have on the farm.
I don't think we're gonna wanna pull the buildings close to the road.
Right.
There's a good chance.
And the state will probably give you crap because of all the extra curb cuts that you're putting in there. The DOT doesn't want to limit the amount of curb cuts.
Well, that will bring up that whole, as Donna is more than aware, I can hear a sign from over there. I mean, both of us having to go through the ordeal of the Central York County Connection Study. That was a year, wasn't it, or was it longer?
It was a year and a half.
Year and a half, 18 months, yeah, long time. I mean, that really was much ado
I
about
think I
that.
was still on the planning board.
You were still on the planning board. In that particular study, what precipitated out from 18 months of work that started off with basically building new interstate highway systems through York County in several locations. It's boiled down to essentially a series of advisory design criteria for local municipalities, i.e. Arundel, Bedford, West Bedford, Warren, Arundel, Lyman, and Alfred, in which they would like us to develop parallel road systems that limit the number of curb cuts that can be allowed or necessary on Route 111. As far as DOT, Route 1, for instance, is important for DOT to move people. Route 111 is even more important because that's considered to be a community corridor, much more than Route 1 is, or at least our section of Route 1. So they're interested in speed. Yeah, they want people to go back and forth to Sanford, and Sanford wants the same thing. They just assume the towns in between not to exist. because they would like this to be, you know, a bullet train that goes through there, essentially. And so the state, recognizing it as a service center, would like to see us do that. That's, frankly speaking, going to be difficult, given topography and given ownership patterns. It's going to be difficult, but something the planning board is going to have to struggle with. And quite frankly, I didn't bring this up last time, but that's something the planning board is going to be struggling, I shouldn't say struggling, but working with in Thursday night's meeting is going to be plotting out a theoretical road, parallel road in the DB2 district, where it can come in, where it can come out, and the intent of which is not to require that a road be put in that location, but to format creative ideas among landowners
And to show
how
how
it can be
it
done.
can be used.
Yeah. And we already have, quite frankly, we already have an entrance. I've already talked to the property owner. He wants to do it. John Hughes would love it to go up his road. And strangely enough, we have a piece of land that the town of Arundel owns that would be a perfect exit location. So
So for this here, do you,
here it gets a little more difficult.
do you think that the planning board have any intent on changing the CCN?
Yeah, I think they do. Well, I don't think they look at changing it dramatically. I think that they're going to be looking at increasing the building size. They're not going to require the same design standards. I don't think they're trying to create that village look in through here.
I don't think it's practical.
It's not practical.
However, just to go back a second to the curb cuts.
Yeah.
From the Biddeford line to almost that whole stretch.
Yeah.
Because of all the little houses on 111, we have already a bunch of curb cuts.
Yes, we do.
And if some of those residential dwellings were to be made available to small businesses at some point,
Right.
we're not gonna have a curb cut issue, it's already there.
Yeah.
And we also have, as a result of any one of those, the opportunity to get back to the north side of 111 and do something in the background, I would think. The only thing that I would see changing there is scale it, make the median 20,000 square feet so something larger could go in. And also perhaps eliminate the possibility of housing development. So you can have individual dwellings, it doesn't have to be mixed use, but could be mixed use.
Mm-hmm.
And not allow a subdivision.
Yeah. Definitely could do that.
And that would encourage business use as opposed to more residential.
There is a subdivision off of Limerick Road.
Which is this one right here. Fairview.
Yeah, but that's not in that section.
No.
No, another one is not, right? No.
No, that's the,
You want to stay east of the power lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And this CCN doesn't go past the power line.
Like this.
And right now, this doesn't quite go to the power lines today.
No.
So it
No,
stops at
it ends right,
Houston's.
it ends at Phil Abbey's land, right here.
What is, though,
And so-
Phil was working on a subdivision, I can't remember, did that ever get approved?
No, that's
No.
further down by the graveyard.
No, right,
There?
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a six lot cluster subdivision. Now, unfortunately, Phil let it lapse, and so he had to
I
start.
couldn't remember if we had approved that or not. It was a while back.
No, he had some condo docs to do, and not condo, he had some association docs to do and so forth, and I think he made a business decision that the market wasn't right, and decided not to.
Well, there was a lot of work there, there was a lot
It's a
of.
huge amount of work.
Yeah, a lot of
It was
work.
a very difficult site to get through, and probably the cost were just escalating to the point where it was.
Well, he had another one down by the graveyard, didn't he?
That is the one we're talking about. By the Dow,
That's
by the
not
Dow
there.
Cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, but they're
It
pointing
went right
out
by.
there, that's
Yeah.
further down.
It's just shy of the power lines.
Yeah, it's right in there.
Right there.
It's hard to see.
Yeah,
It's under dense
The
concrete.
cemetery is right
You've
here.
got as you come back from the east, you've got the power lines, and you've got that little residence on that
It's
side.
past Dustin's. It's on the right-hand side past Dustin's.
No,
He had done one down there too, where the trailers were.
We're talking about two different things.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. He has
Let's
more
focus
than
on the
one.
south side.
He had more than one. He had
Okay.
another one down further. So you went past Dustin's, past the Dorks house, and then
Here's
Ju-
Houston's.
just before you got to where the Agway was, there's a couple of trailers with a little graveyard in there, and I thought he had requested a subdivision in there too.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Here's the two trailers, here's the graveyard right over here, and then it comes down in here. He was doing a subdivision down in
I
here.
think when you're looking at a map, it's just a little deceiving versus when you're driving.
Yeah. No, that's the same spot, I think.
Okay.
So are we looking to expand this district? I can just tell you, the Board of Selectmen, we get comments all the time about 111 being a commercial corridor, and we ought to zone this as allowing commercial uses all along it like Lyman is. And although what Alfred has done, I don't think they've done that far.
No, they haven't. They've kept it in the middle pockets.
Right. And when most of the landowners, two of which are sitting here, probably have no interest in that anyway.
Well, it's not practical for a whole ton of reasons.
It might be, I'm just telling you that.
No, I
I hear that.
understand, yes, I understand that's been ongoing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it may support certain types of growth, but because of the soil types, it really does limit what you
And
can put out there.
technically, it's already a commercial area because agriculture is a business.
You might be able to get away with putting a town hall out there, but I don't think that you'd get away with putting any type of substantial building that weighed too much because of the clay.
Just have to build it tall to start with.
Yes, so it's a safe.
They put the school on site.
No
Now we're
problem,
gonna
right?
build another one.
That's why we have positive drainage in the gymnasium.
However, I mean, in terms of expanding, not expanding this district isn't full by a long shot now.
No, it isn't.
And I don't see any immediate potential for that happening. Now, maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, when another group of people gather to discuss this very same issue, there might be a good argument for that, but I certainly don't see that at the moment.
I mean, it may make sense, Donna, to take it to the CMP line,
But that's
but that's,
another
After that, then
another 100
it's-
feet.
yeah, but then after that, you're dealing with no water, because it's all salt water.
I
And
understand the limitations, I'm just saying this,
But if this was zoned business all the way to the next town, and I'll guarantee you that there'd be somebody that would bought some land and put a business there for something. I mean, it's such a heavily traveled road that, you know, yeah, it's salt water, but when you're running a business, depending on what the business is, that water requirement is pretty low, you know?
Right.
So, you know, a car dealership, you know, I mean, but if that was all business, I'm sure that some business somewhere would have, more than one, would have come and picked up some property, or would have attempted to. That's just my gut feeling, but.
well, my concern is if in fact the casino comes back as a viable enterprise in Biddeford, that's gonna draw more traffic, and that is gonna be a magnet for a variety of businesses, I believe, who want to cash in on the traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to make that all business, I'm just stating that if it was.
So only raise it because I hear it
Yeah.
at our level all the time,
Yeah.
criticism that,
I hear it.
what do we do? You must.
Yeah, and the planning board, there's been discussions with the planning board, people coming in also.
And I have to say, as somebody that has land there, I mean, it's gone to the extreme up there, where, you know, they limit this, the setbacks of this, and it's like, because it's that corridor, it has so many restrictions on it right now. I don't even like them. Not sure that I'm ready for all business, but I don't really like all the restrictions that are on it today.
Those restrictions have been there for a long time now, haven't they? They haven't changed.
The 100-foot setback,
Huh?
the 100-foot setback, I think that came in 2005. That was fairly recent.
Yep.
Yeah, that's that corridor protection overlay piece.
Well, they never really fully implemented that.
No,
They wanted the
it
design
it's
state.
connected to that.
We've got bigger signs, bigger front.
Yep, and I'm not sure that the question is, what are we trying to achieve? I mean, this is we're almost walking into the big question that, it's gonna be the biggest question in this whole process. What do we want to achieve in the western section of town? We have lots of data that's actually been substantiated by the economic development, by the branding study, that corroborates the attitudinal survey you did back in 2004. You said, yeah, we like the rural character. We love the rural character of Arundel. We like the rural character of that area down there. How are we going to deal with that issue? And then the obvious question of, this is a natural area for business development. How are we going to mesh those two? We can wait till this area fills up and then continue to march down? Do we not do anything? I mean, that's a major policy issue. What I got out of the 2005 was, this is the line. We'll go from where we want to go after we fill this up. When we fill this up, we'll take the next step, because this has a certain value. Whether it's this area or not, one gets the impression people were talking about this area. I certainly would have liked to have nailed it down more, because it wasn't that specific in the questionnaire. But when you talk about Arundel's rural character, this is one of the few places where you actually have visibility, where you can see long distances, where you have rolling pasture lands.
Right.
It's just about the only place well, you do have it out on Thompson, but it's this in Thompson, and I think that's the icon for the Brimstone and down. Those are the models for the valued agricultural and rural image that people are attracted to.
Plus, it's also where the agricultural land is suitable for agriculture.
Strange
And as I
enough.
said before, I object to the argument that there were no businesses in that stretch of 111, because dairy farming is a business. And
Very
all the
important
other,
business.
yes, any agricultural operation is a business. Forestry is a business, even if it's on private land. You're still raising trees for cash at some point. So it's not like that's land sitting there doing nothing.
And we have little spatterings of businesses in there.
Yeah, Focal Point is there,
We have Focal Point, we have Clears,
The bank.
Clears is in
Yeah.
there.
Credit Union, yeah.
yeah, the credit union up there.
So,
So,
and then the other problem is
Is
that
the credit union at the end of the?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
at the right, it's actually in Arundel. And it's
The
in the
little piece
airport.
of Ashley's is one of them, too.
Yeah, actually, it's in
Actually, yeah.
the other problem then is too, is if we said, okay, let's develop that as commercial, then we're gonna have a problem with curb cuts.
Yeah, we're also gonna, there's also a little issue, and, I'm gonna pull out the plan that the classic planner had, saying, you wanna build critical masses of business development in certain locales. You don't wanna dilute it by spreading it all over Halifax, because then it's difficult to get people to identify an area as a commercial area. You only have destination businesses as a result. So you don't want to dilute it by having too many businesses scattered all over. You want to in locations, because that's where people go.
Yeah, but, again, it's a great opportunity. Route 1 is loss of traffic, but it's mostly seasonal. This is year-round traffic.
Commuter traffic.
Yeah, commuter traffic that, yeah.
But because it's commuter traffic, you're also not looking at people who are going to stop at businesses. They're on their way to work or on their way home.
I don't know, I stop every day at Cumberland Farms on my way home to work. Every single day. That's where I get my gas, that's where I buy my paper.
I don't think most people do, judging from what I've seen.
I don't know, that place is pretty packed
Well,
every time I pull in.
yes, it's an isolated place, yes, but it's a gas station, you're a commuter. But in terms of, a little shop where one might pick up a gewgaw, not necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily gonna happen. Plus, the other thing that in our 18 months that we spent with DOT doing quality discussion, and Kate's Butter actually had requested a drop in the speed limit so that they don't have one of their 18-wheelers broadsided. DOT doesn't want to drop that speed limit through there for anything. So you're looking at a 50, 55 mile an hour corridor with people moving 24/7.
They were already discussing changing that to 4-lane.
Not,
And on that one, I do wanna add, if you're down, you know, if you're up at 4 lanes and going 55, how much you're really looking at the agriculture, you're going from point A to point B, so if you're looking at that rural character, you're really not getting it. I mean, people are driving, I just think it's an opportunity for bigger businesses, not necessarily a top-end Cumberland Farms, but not knowing what's coming in, that if the casino comes, there's going to be opportunities for
Hotels.
Hotels,
Yeah.
motels,
Yeah.
warehouses.
Of course, we're also assuming it's gonna be in Bedford.
What's that?
We're also assuming it's gonna be in Bedford.
Right, we're assuming it's gonna be in Bedford.
Whoa,
Casinos,
whoa.
There goes my walk park.
Oh, you could retire.
You know, over here is the sewer line.
nice try. I'll let you know when it starts working for me.
And that's also assuming that, you know, we can all sit here and hypothetically, and I can talk as a landowner, but I also know my neighbors. There's a lot of people there that are really not interested in having it become commercial.
I do think we're missing out on a huge opportunity. I think that it's way more traveled than any other road, easier access for any type of bigger businesses. And the growth that is going to happen at some point in Bedford.
So we have the conflict, we're butting heads between character, will of the landowners, and what could be business opportunities in the future.
Well, I think you also have to take a look at what the land is. What can it hold? I mean, we've been out there when they've drilled holes and lost their machinery.
Yeah.
You know, it's blue clay out there. You know, and while people can say you can put businesses out there, I think that you still are going to have some substantial challenges to try and put anything out there.
But for the right dollars, it'll be met.
We have the same challenge though with the lead in the part of the park that we designated, so.
Same thing.
Yeah, there's always a challenge.
So
I mean,
there's always a
yeah.
challenge around that. And
I remember
Tom's
talking to
right in
the-
saying if you're a business, if you've got the money behind you and you're ready to do that kind of development, you've got a challenge on either side here.
I remember talking to the landowner of the business owner of the golf place where Home Depot is, many years ago. And he had said, you know, I remember him saying, oh yeah, people have come here all the time, but you know, nobody's gonna buy this, it's just too expensive. And the work that they did over there was just amazing, the ledge that they, you know. So when the money is there,
Oh, everything
You know.
possible.
Move on.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a little tougher in clay, but, you know, they have, you know, they'll drill pylons, they'll go down deep and,
These little skyscrapers in Manhattan, they can put a building anywhere.
That's right.
Remember that the main mall, by the way, it's all in blue and clay, and actually I was in the Nonsuch River, we were drilling borings there, and I just watched the casing slide right down. It was 125 feet of blue clay. The liquid stuff, the stuff that gushes out and gets on your clothes and dries, and never goes away. And that's, we've got some, we don't have the same depth, but we have the same constraint. Yeah. So, yeah, that's
We
a
have quite a
problem.
few houses out there too, so
We do have houses.
you have to,
It seems, it just seems that perhaps at this juncture, the development that we're trying to focus on, the leaving the designation what it is, and also whether it sort of makes sense, and also when we think about the struggles that have occurred in the past in trying to get revisions to a plan put forward, a changing plan or something new, that at least we are increasing the size of the retail, that buildings that could be built on that corridor. So that seems to me like, at least we're trying to encourage, as Ted said, some sort of concentration in the area where we are designating, and who knows, in 5 years, maybe we need to come back, it needs to be relooked at, or.
And I think it's written so that there's a process with it. I believe the plan was written so that could happen.
Only if the first part got filled, if I remember right.
Yeah.
If there was
And what does filled mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm telling you, the planning board struggled with that many times.
Yeah, we've all seen how that works, because when somebody else wanted their piece, all they had to do was petition, the other person wanted their piece, and they petitioned, so.
Well, I mean.
There is a process to expand it if
Right,
somebody
I mean,
really wants
you
to.
have a framework, and if you don't have a framework, then you can never have any exemptions, because everything's an exemption, so at least you have a framework with the possibility for future exemption, I guess, that's how I would look at it at this point in time.
And like Kate's Butter, I mean, Kate's Butter didn't really
It is, yeah,
belong where it was.
it's
but
out of the frame. it's
with
out of the-
doing work and coming to a compromise, I mean, you could do that with almost any business. You know, if you feel that it's in the best interest of the town, you can do that with almost any business without opening it up to every single thing that you might not want.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got lucky with Kate's Butter because, you know, we had somebody in town that was, I believe it was Sean, that was, kind of had a discussion and kind of put a bug in somebody's ear. But, you know, most developers, you know, when they look, they'll go to the ordinance and they'll download the ordinance, oh, geez, yeah, no. And they skip right over it.
Houston or Sean Adams,
What's that?
Houston.
Dewston, yeah.
Oh, I don't know though,
They
you'd be
kinda skip
surprised,
right over it.
you should see how many things I get in the mail. Just on my land.
in disagreement a little bit, as hard as it is to change things, I absolutely would consider extending the corridor. That's what we're here for, in my opinion, is to open up new businesses, more business. And I think within 5 or 6 years, we'll be right back at it again, and I want more time for people.
Well, I would disagree with just a little bit. I don't think the purpose of this committee is to open up the whole town to new businesses. We're looking at the comprehensive plan to accommodate some things the planning board is working on with regards to the southern end of Route 1, which is where it started. And then, you know, we're also looking at the other places where businesses exist. But the comprehensive plan serves not only businesses, but it also serves all the residents in town.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want just one zone for Rundle that is business, that makes everything easy, but it's not going to make it a livable town.
I don't think anybody is suggesting that.
Well,
I
no,
don't think
I-
anybody's even coming close to suggesting that.
Playing
I
off,
think the suggestion here
Not
is
stating
for
that
one
purpose.
relatively small section of Route 111. We're not talking the whole town.
no, I agree with that. I wasn't saying, I was using that for the purpose of example. That the comprehensive plan approaches, or I shouldn't say approaches is not a good word, is supposed to deal with the needs of all of the town, which would include business areas, mixed-use areas, and residential areas as well. And that CMP line is, when you drive 111, it's very obvious, once you pass that, you're entering another section. It's CCN, what's currently CCN, the eastern section to the Biddeford line, is already a mixed-use area. It would make sense for us to continue to develop that and loosen up the regulations there, which is what we were discussing originally.
I think we should be having this discussion with the planning board, because, I mean, we really don't, I don't have a feel for what they are thinking, and maybe they don't have a clue either. But, you know, I mean, I think we've had a lot of good discussions here, but I think that should be expanded in a joint session with the planning board to kind of get some ideas on what they're going, and then, you know.
I don't think they're going this far. I think this is actually the charge of this committee. We ought to be looking at that at this point in time and building language in, if we think it's appropriate. We don't have to come back here 5 years from now,
Right.
because this is a process. It's got to go to the voters. I mean, it could take a long time. If there's opportunities that come around for whatever reason, somebody wants to meet all the challenges that the land might present, is there a way now to build language in here that would allow the zoning ordinance to be amended? Because that's all this plan needs, just need enough language in here to kind of envision, if this happens in the future, the zoning ordinance could accommodate. That might be hard to do, but,
It's easy to really hang a big target on the planning board.
Yeah, I mean, if the planning board comes back and says, all of them says, no, you know, we really haven't given it any thought, then at that point, I think, you know, we move forward and try to put some language to allow that, but
if we do, I mean, I don't know what we agree, I don't think Don and Diane do.
Right.
But, you know, what the rest of
but
us.
some of them might, you know, they might have come into some sort of agreement, like what they would want to see, and then, I mean, I think we take it from there, but I know there's been discussions with the planning board on that before, and it's kind of, I've never got on one feeling one way or the other, but you guys have never really gotten deep into it, so.
I think everybody's been dodging.
And I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because I've been passionate about this, I've owned property up there for a long, long time. And that is that you also have to consider the people that are living there. Because we're talking about, and I'm not talking as landowner now, I'm talking about as a person that sits on this committee. It is not our charge to take away people's property rights. And if
I don't think we're doing that.
well, I think that when you start talking about zoning all of 111 business with the number of just homes that are out there, once you cross that CMP line, aside from Cloutier's, which I always question how it ended up there, and aside from the bank, which I definitely question how it got there, there really are not a lot of businesses there. It's agricultural use, it's people's homes, that's where people live, that's where the kids play. I don't think a lot of these
You really don't
people,
even have that many residences.
that's because we're all big property owners. Most of the people that own land there own big chunks of land.
And that may be the biggest constraint to develop from here.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for other you guys, but I don't see you guys selling out to business.
Right, so I guess I would also.
Everybody has their price.
Right, and see, and that's the problem, is that it does, but when you get into that, then you impact everybody else that lives there. So when you're talking about this, I can't look at it just as a property owner, because I'm passionate about how I feel. But how I'm gonna feel 10 years from now could be vastly different, so I'm gonna be an older fart than I am today. But you have to consider that most of this area after the line is all residential. And it's
I guess my
55
question
miles,
is,
and
should
it's,
it be residential? I mean, I don't,
but it is, and you
there's a
can't,
few houses here, but should we have any more houses on 111? At 55 miles an hour?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the state is obviously trying to develop this into
well,
a
when you're gonna
fairly
do this
high-speed
business
corridor,
for 55 miles
which
an
is
hour.
not the kind of place that you wanna be putting houses on either side of the road. You don't want your kids playing in the middle of Route 111.
Well, I don't want a business in there with people trucking 55 miles an hour across it either. And if they start putting businesses, then I'm gonna be 25 miles an hour from my house down to the turnpike.
I'm going to throw a different spin on this, which really explains the look that I just had in my face.
I was hoping you'd do that.
This is a matter, to me, of what the town finds valuable. If we take that stretch and divide it up into, 10, let's say it's 10 major landowners. I have no idea, it could be 20, it could be 12, it could be 8. 10 major landowners. There's a finite number of houses there. There's a dairy farm, and although the dairy farm is on the Hill Road, the fields on 111 are his to use. He hays them, he takes the product off. If the people of the town find that section of our town valuable from an agricultural and both agricultural in terms of use and agricultural in terms of the vision of it, the character, then it will be easy to keep that open forever. If it's not valuable to the town for that purpose, then it can be anything. You know, I don't want to see a bunch of houses on it. It doesn't make any sense. You know, if I were going to buy a piece of land and build a house, I certainly wouldn't pick 111. Good grief. The reason I own property on 111 is because you used to be able to walk across the road in the middle of the day almost without looking, and you would not become roadkill.
Used to be considered the boonies.
Yes. So a lot has changed in the almost 40 years we've owned our property. What happens in the future, you know, we can't look 5 years down the road. We can't depend upon Biddeford to put in a casino. We can't depend upon Biddeford for almost anything, but nonetheless. When we put the comprehensive plan together and make a recommendation as to what should happen, it should reflect the desires of the people of the town. I don't see that the people of this town right now, based on all those studies and surveys that we've done, would feel as though that corridor should become either intensely developed as residential or intensely developed as commercial. It doesn't make any sense on a lot of levels. Is there room for a change down the road? Diane's point about Kate's Butter. Yeah, when Kate's Butter came to us and said, can we do this? We looked at the comp plan and we said, well, geez, no. But what did you have in mind? And it was the judgment of the Comprehensive Plan Committee working in conjunction with the planning board, and then ultimately the voters of the town who said, this is a good thing for the town, let's allow this use. And I see that same potential for something else that might come into that area or anywhere else in town. The language that was written, we had a choice with Kate's Butter. We could have done the traditional spot zoning and said, okay, you can do this here and nobody else can do anything like it. And our choice was not to do that. We wrote a very generic bit of language so that any agricultural and demonstration facility could go anywhere in R4 and do a similar thing. It doesn't have to be another butter factory. It could be honey. It could be wool. It could be any number of products that would increase, improve the financial status of the town in terms of tax revenue, but at the same time maintain in R4 that elusive rural character that we've never been able to quite define. So Kate's Butter ends up looking like a large barn. There's a big parcel of land which is being used basically for agriculture. They've gone a step further. They've got cows and ducks and geese. It's great. That potential is there for a lot of different places in R4, not just along the Nolan corridor. So I don't see this as a, what does a particular landowner like or dislike, or would they want to do or not want to do, or that everybody has a price? I would beg to differ with that. No, everybody doesn't have a price.
Most people.
I'll buy that one for a price. But everybody has a vision, and if the town's vision is that remain agricultural, then that's how it will remain, regardless of what we write.
So how do we go, this is my thing, I think that if you put a mailing or some sort of getting feedback from the town, and ask them what they were looking for, not so much, I don't believe a visual vision, but I think that people are looking for property tax relief.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Clearly, this, in my opinion, is the most well-traveled, easiest growth in anywhere on the farm. So somewhere you do have to give, if the community is looking for tax relief, you can't limit where that's going to come. And I really do believe that by not extending it, you are limiting.
Then you
In the
open up
near
the whole
future.
town. If you want tax relief, then you open the whole town up to commercial.
But it's not what I'm
We're not
saying,
talking the whole
Diane.
town,
Why
Diane.
are-
We're talking
why is
one
that?
section
Yeah.
of Route
One
101.
section. That's what we're
Well,
talking
the reason
about.
I say that is because if you want to have businesses and that's your tax relief, the biggest problem that we have, and I'm going to, because everybody pussyfoots around it, you can bring in businesses, but a lot of businesses come to people that work there. They're going to want houses. Our biggest problem is the amount of money it costs us to support a school. The more houses you build, the more it costs us as a town. So if you really wanted tax relief, you limit the number of houses that you build.
Or just
But-
castrate people and not have them have kids. I mean,
No,
Good
I'm
for
not,
example.
I'm not saying,
So-
I'm saying that when you look at what it costs for a household versus what they pay, or when you look at what a business pays, because not all businesses pay the same. They might pay some taxes, but not, I guess my problem is that some businesses are a good business. And as a landowner out there, if I saw somebody who I thought was a really good business and I thought that it would be a really good match for the town, then that would probably sway me. My concern is that we would be opening up one of the nicest areas that we have in town to almost anything. And I'm sorry, but I don't really want to look like Biddeford, because Biddeford can't even keep what it has filled. It still has stores that aren't filled. It has houses down on the other end that have been for sale since Biddeford Crossing is open. So I'm not convinced that just opening it up is really gonna benefit the town. And if we do consider opening it up, then we have to be very careful in regards, because I'm really not looking at having my house down there with an auto dealership next door. I've lived in town for 32 years, and I think I deserve more respect than having somebody say, well, you know, just because we want tax relief, you're gonna have a car dealership next to you. That's not really fair.
You know, I, you know, when I said something, Diane, about, you know, opening all businesses, I mean, that was just, you know, a theoretical statement, but you know, protecting the residences there, I agree 100%. I mean, I don't wanna turn around and say, okay, we're gonna make this all business, and, you know, I sure as hell wouldn't want a business in my backyard. You know, I mean, I live in a residential area, and I'd like to keep it that way, so, I mean, obviously, there's gotta be some language there to protect residences that are already there. You know, and I think between us and the planning board, I mean, some buffering, and I'm sure that there's a way to be able to do that, but I really think we need to take a hard look at it, whether we go the whole route or not. I like the rural character of it, but I just think it's an opportunity that the town, as Dorothy is saying, I think it's an opportunity that we're missing out. I mean, the economy isn't there right now, but it's gonna turn at some point in time.
I enjoy both of your properties every day because I drive by them every day. And I like looking at what's there. Not about it. I'm not really in favor of changing it, but that's your property. You need to get the benefit of it, obviously. But to your point a little bit is that the way we reacted to Kate's Butter and the criticism we got was how long it took. And that's because the process had to get about comp plan, we had to go zoning, et cetera,
Right.
so there was no flexibility. We get that a lot from, I think, from businesses that, and that's what will happen, and that's what will be a problem for people thinking about opening businesses in this community. If we're just gonna come in, let's see what you got, and then we'll, where we at. We can't be doing that, I don't think. We gotta identify areas that are, we want businesses or don't, and then deal with what kind of businesses you want there, and accommodate what you need to in terms of residents and what have you. And I think, to your point, Diane, I think most of the people who live in this town don't work in this town. Okay, this is a bedroom community right now, and I think if other businesses came into town, the same circumstance would hold. I don't think we're going to be drawing
No,
people
what
into
I'm
the school
saying is if it
system with
gets
kids or
really
anything
big,
like that.
they're saying, oh, well, you can move big businesses in it.
I have no idea what kind of business. I mean, I just threw this out there because
I
that's it.
think
Let the board
also
select
with
know.
the unemployment that's in the areas. You got Sanford, Biddeford, Saco. It's all an area where they can commute to. It's not, I really don't see it as a place where you're gonna have people moving into where if they already have residences. And it's a relatively short
We've
commute.
seen an uptick in building permits in this town, right?
Yeah, but I can't make a correlation with where they work.
Yeah.
You know, quite frankly, I agree that people tend not to
live in the same town they work. And that's become the standard. It used to be that that was the case. But now people are hanging on their homes, and they'll find a job within a relatively reasonable commuting distance. And just trying to get financing for houses is such a pain these days. Stay put, I'll pay for the gas.
I just want to throw something else into the mix here, especially looking at the sort of discussion we had in one of the first couple of meetings about the idea of what do we do to encourage people who hold larger tracts of land to hold on to those larger tracts of land. So we are doing something that maintains that sense of ruralness, whether it's visual or perception. And is that something that could be brought to play in a broadening the definition of business use in this area, but at the same time thinking about what do we do that encourages those people who have larger land holdings to keep them as larger land holdings as opposed to converting them to business.
Usual problem.
Yep.
We've been wrestling with it for years. How do you do that? Takes money, obviously, to help it.
We've only got really two mechanisms available, three mechanisms available. One is that we already invoke, and you folks already participate in, and that's the deferred taxation system that the state of Maine allows us to do, either through open space or farmland, or tree growth. And then the other one is, of course, what Donna has been trying to launch, and that is a transfer of development rights. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And the other one is, quite frankly, purchase of development rights, which is donations. The town, the municipalities, or land banks purchase the land outright, purchase the development rights to the land, so the land stays a farmland forever, or stays open forever. So that person receives some money, in consideration for that, for preserving it. And at the same time, they retain ownership, and their heirs retain ownership, or the sons retain ownership, and that's terrific. But the problem is that requires money, which is the opposite that of what you're trying to achieve, because that means we're taking more tax dollars and putting it into essentially land preservation. So we're not relieving the tax burden, we're increasing the tax burden. So that's the dynamic tension that we have in land preservation. That's the biggest problem. It's whether everybody loves the Nature Conservancy. If we can prove that there's something very valuable out here, they love to step in and jump in and make those preservations. But their activities are few and far in between because of very limited funding. Certainly, we don't have anything that's going to qualify for Maine, land for Maine's future, because they usually go for wilderness, for farmland preservation. Unfortunately, that's not been a major policy target for the state of Maine. And consequently, that's why we've lost tremendous numbers of farmland with prime and statewide significance around the state. Plus, it's just impossible to get farmland in the state of Maine, at least using traditional methodologies. Alternative ones like backyard farms, yeah, that's the new way, but backyard farms has the advantage of Madison Electric Company providing them with, 4 cents a kilowatt hour power. It's a public power company coming right off the plant, the paper plant. But when it comes to preservation, this is a question I asked the planning board in my interview. And it's a question that I think it's time for us to grapple with. We're going to have to grapple with this, because the R4 district is something this committee is going to have to look at, because the planning board's been sidestepping it for a while. You know this thing.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm going to say.
Yep.
The issue is going to be, what is the value of that area? Does it have value, as we're talking about, to the town? And what are the qualities of that? What defines that value? Is it a visual thing? Is it a scenic corridor? Or is it a character? Is it a cultural thing? Is it the rural character and all the things that go along with rural life? And often it's not bucolic.
it's abandoned cars in the middle of fields, and that's part of rural life, along with mixed uses where they don't seem to make sense. Clotier's being a perfect example. That's rural development, quite frankly. The power sports thing right in the middle of an agricultural field, of course. You know, I'm surprised there isn't a John Deere or a Case dealership down there as well. That's rural character. So what is the rural character that really is important for Arundel citizens? We really should define what that is, or get the citizens to help us define what that is, because that will tell us how we should deal with the entire R4 district, let alone this particular corridor. And if there's a way that we can identify what's important to the citizens in Arundel, what character here is important, then maybe we can come up with some ideas on design standards that preserve that character and still would allow development to occur that wouldn't necessarily impact local residences or abutting property owners. You know, quite frankly, I think Kate's is actually a pretty good prototype for the kind of development where, when it's done, I think we'll find that it will appear to fit naturally into the landscape. I think it already does. And the level of activity is going to be limited. You know, it'll be busy, and there'll be people coming and going, and trucks coming and going, but it's going to seem to fit, because the planning board spent a lot of time making sure it would fit, and the comprehensive plan committee back then put some really good, strong standards in there to make sure it would fit. I'm not sure we couldn't do something like that on a broader scale through here that would accommodate those kinds of uses that would generate taxes without losing the character we're talking about. And maybe that's the direction which we should go with. Quite frankly, the economic development study, which we're having a lot of revisions on, they're really pushing hard on us looking at agricultural, let me put it this way, new emerging agricultural prototypes. What's that mean? I'm not sure.
I voted to tell us.
I know, that's what I was paying them. What is this thing? This is new emerging. Well, I think what it means is more Kates. Monsanto, but I think Monsanto's pretty clean. They're going to stay where they are. But that kind of biotech, farm and agricultural related businesses is what they're proposing. I think that's a great location for that. So it's just a takeoff on Kate's, in which the character of the land is preserved while accommodating the development. And you can do that. I think we did that in our first episode. You know, just show you how I did that really bad drawing that you all loved. Of hiding basically the development in the back portion and where you can't see it. And keeping the open land in front. That's a very simple thing. But there are varieties of ways that you could accommodate it. But you're not going to do it by cookie cutter stamped kind of space and bulk requirements of 100-foot setbacks and 25-foot side setbacks. We know that fails miserably. Houses still sprout out in the middle of fields and they look like weeds out there instead of having some sort of continuity to the land. And so if we were to look at, if this is important, if we want to explore ways we could maybe put some development out there that doesn't violate the character of that area, then we're going to have to look at some creative solutions and not the usual cookie cutter kind of solution. Or it may be just so valuable to the people of this town that they say leave it alone. Let's stay agriculture and all the ramifications of agriculture, including greenhouses, including farm stands. I mean, we went a long ways. We put in farm retail to facilitate that, to help support the dairy and other farmers out there that want to try to get the produce out that have always been confined to little 200 square foot stands.
We've been having this discussion as though there's nothing allowed in R4.
There's a lot.
And there's a lot permitted in R4 already. And that's not to say, and I agree with what Ted was just describing, it's not to say we can't find some other uses that would be, would fit nicely in an R4 district. But yeah, I just, you know, in your land use ordinance, you'll find this cool little chart that tells you what's permitted and what's conditional in R4. And you know, there's a ton of stuff. Sawmill, for example. So there are a lot of potential uses that people who own land in R4, and remember that R4 comprises not just this little section, but about half the town. There's an awful lot of things that people who are landowners in R4 or potentially will be landowners in R4 down the road could do to make use of their land and increase the tax base. In the back of my mind, another thing when we talk about the rural integrity, it's not just the visual and it's not just the character of the renegades who live on that land. We also need to take into account the wildlife. The more that land gets chewed up, cut up, split up, built on, the more deer you're going to find standing on your porch. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I wish they would, because that'd make hunting so much easier.
Or in my.
No, because you can't get a 300-foot distance between the buildings. That's real.
That's right. I will send them to your house, John. But no, I mean, that, and I'm not talking about a London right now at this point, but in other areas of the country where developments have encroached upon the wildlife encroach right back. They don't go away, they just become annoying. Deer, bear, smaller wildlife you don't necessarily think about all the time. Fishers, raccoons, minks, weasels.
So we have all that.
We have a very rich source of wildlife in Arundel, a variety of wildlife, I should say. So I mean that's another thing we should perhaps keep in the back of our minds about leaving large tracts relatively undisturbed. Because the more we disturb them, in fact I can see the difference in what's going on in my yard just because of Kate's fire. Because they cleared out all of that section of woods. And we never saw a deer in the garden. But we got them now. And on the other side of that, obviously, having to do with hunting, is that the more buildings you have, the fewer hunters you have, because they can't. So, that's another issue. And shouldn't obviously drive the economics of the town, but certainly something maybe we should keep in the back of our minds. But, I don't know. I guess, for me, it's partially a language problem to say that we're going to take 111 or, pick a road in town, any road, and say Limerick Road. We're going to make it all commercial. That doesn't sound right for a road. To say we're going to allow more uses in those areas appropriate to the areas, yeah, that makes sense. So I like your description a great deal.
Which one?
The one you did just prior to my bringing up the little chart with what is allowed. In terms of finding things that fit, that can be permitted in an area.
And I think that you can put in a system or a procedure where you could judge, you could anticipate what would fit, and then you would have a system where you could judge what would fit if something new came along, without having to go through the process of waiting till June to amend the ordinance, because that is a deterrent to somebody who's looking for a site locator, who's working for a company, looking to go into an area. Oh, well, just hang on for 6 months. We're gonna change the zoning. It's not, thanks. I'll go over to Saco. I'm gonna go to Hollis or something. They don't have time for that. But if you have a method, yeah, it's a PUD. It's a conditional use. So I know for contract zone. I'm not a fan of contract zones either. I like borders on contract zones as to what you're doing. But something that's an accelerated process will aid us into getting the kind of development that we might want in this town without having to necessarily always go to town meeting in order to change a zone.
You just gotta be real careful on doing that, because you're always gonna get the folks that are gonna say, well, yeah, he's your buddy, and you guys did it for them, and why can't you do it for me? And, we've seen that happen in the past before, where, the planning board has been accused of, favoritism to one developer or one person, or, so, we gotta be real careful with that. That's, and somewhat I agree with that, but, having been on the receiving end of, Ian said, you know, you guys are fit, and that's not a good position to be
Unless you say, you're right.
in. I certainly want to.
We like his development better than yours, because his development does more for us than you do, and you have no inherent right to do this. It would have to be that kind of situation, almost like a
And then you
special
open
exception.
yourself up
I know,
for
I hate that
for
word
a
too.
CBA.
Not- right.
Yeah, then here we go back in court again.
Yeah.
And while I don't like how long it took to get Kate's done.
It was done right.
It was done right.
Right.
Everybody when we left, whether it took as long, it took a long time, but I think the person who wanted to build it was okay with it. The planning board was okay with it, the comp plan was okay with it, and obviously the town was okay with it. And I'm a firm believer that haste makes waste. And that is that if you try to rush something, sometimes you end up with something that's not necessarily what you wanted. The problem I have is that once it's there, it's there. You can't, if it's a business that you don't like and they find a way to get around your loopholes, everyone in that area is stuck with that business and stuck with as big as they get.
And smart.
That was different.
No, it wasn't.
That's totally different. That was actually economic development. The economic development director saw them out.
Now, that was that little list that we got when they wanted to put the waste management in here, areas that they look for when they want to cite those things.
So, if we were looking to expand business opportunities in town, would it make sense in terms of the language you were talking about, things that would be appropriate in that kind of setting? Would it make sense to make that language apply to R4 in general? Because if it would be compatible for an open space area with residences nearby on 111, would it not be equally compatible someplace else in town in R4? Kate's Butter. We could put Kate's Butter any place in town, and it would fit in R4. Obviously, Kate's is happy because they're on 111 because of the truck access. But if it was a different kind of facility, a different kind of business, let's say it was a biomed facility that didn't have, the necessity of being that close to the turnpike, would it not fit just as easily in someplace else in town in R4?
I'm not sure, it depends on what the intensity of the use is. If you had a biomed facility that had a shift of 400 workers getting out at 3 o'clock, suddenly you're gonna have one hell of a traffic flow on Thompson Road that may be beyond the road's capability.
And
In
I'm
fact,
not
I would say
interested
it
in
would
that
be.
next to my property on 111.
Regardless of what time all those people are at.
Right.
But, well, then that becomes a problem in any residential area.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of use
And
is
becomes a
not.
problem even on 111.
It's something that requires an arterial solution, because you're gonna, quite frankly, have to, if you don't control it by lights, you're gonna have to, well, actually, that's one way that you have to do is control it by signalization, if you have that kind of use. If you had a peak hour of 500 cars, yeah, you're gonna need signalization. But I think of like north, I think of TD Bank North in Falmouth, which is a very, very, it's a very crowded road on Route 100 in there. They don't have signalization there. They actually time their shifts so that they don't hit the peak hour that the traffic's going between Portland and Falmouth.
There's gotta be some language that protects the residents and also for future growth. I mean, Kate's Butter is a perfect example in Old Orchard.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes to an extreme,
Yes.
but, I mean, the same thing could, to Diane's point, the same thing could happen. You have we allow a business in the end, they want to expand it. So, I mean, somehow we have to make sure that there's language to protect the existing homeowners, that even though there may not be a whole lot of them, I still don't want to discredit the ones that are there.
No.
I still think we gotta look at 111 differently. I don't think
I think
111
it's not
I mean,
R4.
it's not exactly. I mean, I'm not sure it should be in
Yeah.
R4. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
It is now, and that's, your analysis is right from that perspective, but if you could take it out of or I hate to say this, can create another district of some sort.
Weren't you the one
Another
that
color,
last
that's
meeting?
right.
Use.
I mean, that's the thought process. I mean, I'm open to talk about it, but I think we gotta talk about it, so.
We do have to talk about it because that's the natural thing. And
I mean,
the
'cause-
natural tendency would be, we have a high traffic corridor here. It also happens to go through a very valuable, a culturally and aesthetically valuable area of town that has a great deal, it's a sacred place to people who live there. And it's not the same as Thompson Road, it's not the same as Fairview Drive.
So,
And I wanna hear, I just wanna hear from, I think you do too, from the community, to see what their thoughts are.
Absolutely.
And not just necessarily this group,
But-
but
but
community
if you-
because of input.
if you take 111 from, let's go from CMP line down to the border on the west, north and south of it, where do you delineate that this is no longer R4?
But that's a decision we make at every zone.
Well, I realize that, but, you're either going to go by property lines, or you're going to pick still another arbitrary number and say, 50 feet back, 1,000 feet back.
Well, that's what we're doing in DB 1 and 2 at this point in time, it's gonna be the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, the thing, the difference with that though is, those are much smaller properties.
Well, you got larger properties, so.
Much larger, but yeah, I mean, you definitely gotta pick something somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying we gotta have the discussion. 'Cause I
You also
wanna
have
be
an
sure
area that's
the
historically
next time
been
at the selectmen's
business.
meeting, that we talked about it and the town said this.
Right.
You know?
I think I lost my, I think everybody's home or their land is somewhat sacred, just in defense. And sometimes you've got to kind of, I agree, you got to put it out to the community. It was quite a long time ago, I think, then we got their viewpoint. I think it was a small, when was it, 2005? When we all sat down, and I really do think it's important, because their views might have changed a little. Again, you've got gonna be 4 lanes, right?
No.
No,
No, we're standing to, well, it'll be 3, there's gonna be a turnaround.
To a certain point, right? But it has the potential. It's just,
We gotta
Hill
adjust.
Road.
The turning lane's gonna be at Hill Road, but there's gonna be a 3rd lane,
Passing
up to
on-
Drew's Lane.
Yeah.
Drew's Lane.
From New Road to.
Drew's Mill. Get that road.
I remember
Very
that.
well, I can't.
except the last I got something, I think it was in the mail, saying that the Hill Road had been put on hold and that they were gonna be looking at a light.
Light?
A light? Well, we just had another accident today, we had another people in there today, so.
And we've had 2 of them in a couple of weeks.
It is, actually, that is rated, as you remember, Donna, that's rated as the most dangerous intersection in York County, not for death, but for maiming. And more maims occur than any other intersection in York County.
Yeah, and one of the issues with what they wanted to do there was not gonna allow, it was gonna severely impede agricultural use. Because with the 3 lanes there, Billy's never gonna be able to get across the street to get to my fields. He's never gonna be able to get across one lane to get anywhere. So they were gonna look at that because they knew that that was a big issue. So we'll see what they come up with. They don't have any money right now, so.
Well, but it depends on whether or not the bond goes through. You know, like, you got $100 million bond that's okay.
Yeah, well, I don't talk about it, so.
Well,
Everybody else will.
I was gonna say, have you ever seen a bond that the voters in the state of Maine have voted down? I think there was one, and there was a prison bond.
Yeah, most of those always get passed.
every time one of those bonds come up, I ask it. I've never had anyone admit that they voted for it, but somehow it gets passed. Everybody that I know
80% too.
say they didn't
Something
vote
like
for it.
that.
I don't like that. Where the heck did the money come from?
That's because most people that vote for it don't even understand where the money comes from and they have to pay it back.
Oh, it's free money, it comes from the town.
All right, let's see if we can't get a little something done tonight that's official. Not that the discussion has not been good, but that's what's good. There we go. If we go back to where we started, which was the CCN. Based upon what we had discussed the last time, and where we started with this discussion, under uses, and again, the language is there for CCN is basically what's in the existing comprehensive plan with two little edits. Under uses, if it allowed for a mix of small to medium scale, but medium is now 20,000 square feet as in DB1, that allows for larger commercial operations. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone else left. And then at the end of that, it says, but new single-family subdivisions will not be permitted. That was the other thing I was gonna suggest, and that would keep the residential use of that eastern end of 111 down to a dull roar and encourage businesses and mixed-use types of things.
A new single-family subdivision will not be permitted, is that in language now?
No.
No.
I forgot.
No.
Okay.
No, I put that in as a proposal based upon what we were doing with DB1,
Yep.
or what the planning board was looking to do with DB1, I guess I should say.
What do you mean by community uses?
Wow, that's your language, not mine.
I didn't write that.
Well,
Did I?
it's a town planner, it's basically like
Plenaries?
a town hall, or, you know, if the town decided to put up some sort of a community building, a library, yeah,
A chapel.
something town owned.
Like a chapel.
A playground,
A ball field.
yes.
Municipal uses then. What community use for it, said we
Just
can
use ball fields.
I'm not sure I want to put it on my list. Pretty sure I don't want it also.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be on 111, it'd be in that.
I see that. Same.
Do you see any potential for going to larger buildings if they're further from the road?
I don't know. Not based on what you said before, but
Well,
I've actually seen Sean's plan for his land, if he ever can get sewer, because he's got a ledge problem. And they're all under 10,000, that's not the problem, but if somebody wanted to put a larger facility, let's say Kate's Butter, but in the back, away from and because really the only available land per se, except for the south side between
except for here, in this area right in here, most of the developable land's in the back for larger buildings. You have to get up on top, it's a ridge there.
well, do you see anything larger than 20,000 square feet going in there though?
Could. Never know. You know. Right, you see them. Right next to your place.
How much
Rick
land
would
do they need for this development?
Oh, hundreds, just for the parking.
All right, so if we went to large, how many square feet are we talking about there, 100,000?
I don't see 100,000 going in there just because of site constraints, frankly speaking. But I mean, we could have a sliding scale, we could say, have it go up to like 50 or 60,000. I mean, let's say somebody wants to put a Hannaford in there. Yeah, let's compete with Demoulas, good idea. That's a good
No, but
idea.
it-
IGA, that'll work.
Let's talk about economic definition.
And they won't do it because there's not enough water or sewer. You need water and sewer for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you would find for that kind of use would be warehouse use.
The rule is warehouse, because they're expanding the main.
Right. The warehouse use would probably be more likely to be that kind of use, because it has no services demand.
Maybe distribution.
I think having gas lines that close, does it depend?
There's potential if we get underneath the turnpike right now. Well, don't forget there's also, I'm throwing in another wrench here. There is that legislation that does allow, that intrudes on franchise zones. That if you refuse to serve in an area, then another provider can come in and take your franchise. So, whether Maritimes wants to get into that is another issue. I doubt it, they're a transmission company. But somebody might wanna, who knows? I don't know what Biddeford's up to. I haven't talked to Biddeford. I haven't talked to the economic development director about this issue. Because they play there. I know John Booby plays his cards very close to the vest on this issue.
Is there a way to make the size contingent on
Distance.
the size of the property and the type of use? Because if it's a fairly low impact use and it's in the back side, then that would be vastly different than one that would be a high impact and right on the road where there's a lot of traffic.
Which kind of takes us back to the language under uses, where we have a sentence that says larger or more intense uses that would impact surrounding residential areas and generate significant volumes of traffic will not be permitted.
Yep.
So it's already in
So
Or they could be conditional uses.
it was a,
Conditional is almost allowed.
It is
You might as
allowed
well
with
just say it's
conditions.
allowed.
It is a lot.
It is allowed with conditions.
so if it was a large building with a low traffic volume, so a warehouse run by robots, there we go.
Most warehouses
that-
only have 5
That
lots.
could potentially happen there. So back to, I guess, the question of size. Small, do we want to do small, medium, or large scale there? And let the planning board set the limits on large because of this area?
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, they would have to come up with, I would recommend that they would have a limit on the size. Anything over that would be a conditional use, and they'd have to come up with the conditions. That would be part of the section. If you're gonna have a building over this, you have certain conditions you gotta meet, and it might have certain thresholds. You can't generate X number, more than X number of trips during the peak hour. You can't, basically to preserve, to allow a use that is gonna have a huge impact on adjacent residences.
You're gonna get some of the planning board members say that, here we go, more regulation.
Yep, but yeah.
They're used to, we live in a
Oh, I-
regulated society.
I was gonna say,
Come on, folks.
I agree.
And what we're trying to do here is actually increase your opportunity with conditions where you don't impact your neighbors. So it's not, you got conditions in order to do more. If we wanna limit them, we'll stick with the 15,000 and say, fine, we'll just keep going status quo, and you wanna put in that distribution center, better go over to B1, because that's where it's allowed. Bring your checkbook, because you're gonna be blasted.
I think part of the key to getting around the too many regulations is the organization of the document,
Yes,
which is what you have been working on.
trying to.
Recently had this discussion with someone. So that if you look at this area and you say, this is where I want to put my business, you don't have to have this to look through. You just go to the section that talks about this area and you can ignore the rest of the town. So, although the regulations might be detailed and specific for this area, they don't appear to be 300 pages of onerous, because you're looking at a small chapter, so to speak. And I think it's more presentation than reality, and ease of use than the number of regulations.
It's perception. Well, no, you're right, it's ease of use. The intent is to make it so that it doesn't scare the hell out of anybody who wants to put a business in here. You give them a little document instead of, as you say, this huge tome.
Right,
Because right now, you gotta give them the huge tome.
right, and say, read this, see if you can find anything and it applies to you. Good luck.
And after you're done with that, I'll point out all the tripwires you just set off.
And be specific in your list as to what is or isn't allowed.
Yeah.
Right.
And be careful about your conditional allowed.
Well, the problem with the conditional in the past is there haven't been many conditions. The conditional was written in such a way was, well, if we like it, well, that's conditional. Conditionals have to be really specific. You don't want to make it so vague. You want to say, look, if you're going to have 50,000 square feet, then you're going to have X number of, you basically have to limit the number of trips generated. You have to have limitations on certain types of uses for that size building.
Well, the
You make it very specific.
Well, the conditional use, depending on what zone you,
Yeah.
could vary.
Yes, it
Well,
There's
does.
a conditional use here versus a conditional use.
But that's why the organization of the document makes a difference.
Exactly.
Because if you're looking to build here, your rules, regs, conditions are different than if you're looking to build over here, which
It's all in
means
the
you
detail.
got a different chapter to look at.
Right.
It's all in the detail.
Yes, it is all, you're very right. It is the detail. The detail is the make or break situation in most developments, quite frankly. It isn't cake.
Yes.
The details there make that project. If those weren't there, you'd have a flat roofed building with all of the trucks parked outside, and you'd have people pretty upset about it. It's the details that
It
make
would
it.
look like it belonged.
And it looks like it. And that's the details that are gonna be in the DB one and the DB two it's the dealing with the little details that really make or break the project. And it puts more burden on the planning board, puts more burden on the applicant, but in some ways it provides what I would call creative stimulation for the applicant too. The guys who worked on VIP said they had a blast doing it. They had fun doing it. They went from their usual bunker kind of project that VIP does, to making it fit in the runway. And it's not a massive change. They still have that 10,000 square foot, box inside, but it looks like it fits, and they enjoy doing it.
But the only reason that happened is because we had a couple of residents speak up, otherwise it would have been just a regular.
Right.
And we had residents come to the planning board meeting and say, hey, you know what, this is in my backyard, why can't we make it? And, they were open to work. There were no conditions in the ordinance, it was,
And VIP was willing to work.
VIP was willing.
VIP
Somebody
and
could have-
designers were willing to do it.
They were willing,
But
but
they
we could have had
find-
somebody that said,
Some.
no,
No,
I'm gonna
I
put
have
it
to.
this way, and
Don't have to.
we got lucky with that one.
Yes, you did. But it shows where the details do matter. And so if we're careful in every district trying to achieve, we're trying to come up with a finished product. This ordinance is our tools to arrive at a result. We have to have a very clear idea what the result is going to be.
Isn't our job, though, not to deal with those details? Our job is to be focusing on the big picture here.
Yes.
And the planning board does all what we had this last half-hour discussion on.
Yes.
I
You're
think so,
absolutely
that's
correct.
why-
Right, but
I feel like we're spending a lot of time on diversion conversation here about what is the role of the planning board, and our job is to really give them a framework to work from. And so I guess I'd like to say, let's put large in here, because I think large makes sense. And then let the planning board figure out what those conditions are and what that is.
I think for our part, even though it's not.
And not that I don't think we should have this discussion, I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
it feels like we're like talking about what the role of the planning board is, not what our role is.
No, and I think you'll find that this happens a lot, and I think part of it is, for those of us that have been through this before, we have a lot of this discussion even with the planning board, because I think it's a lot easier for Tad to go back and say, all right, they're sending this back, but this is really what they discussed. Because what you really don't want to have happen is, you don't want to have the ordinances written, and then you have people from either the comp plan or the people from the outside who know some of us and say, wait a minute, it's really not what we intended. So there really has to, for those that have had meetings with the planning board, we've done this a lot. There has to be some idea as to where we're thinking, because we've run into issues before where they say, well, we wish we would have known what the planning board's intent was when they did that, because we didn't fully understand that's what that was, or we didn't understand that. So I think sometimes having more discussion so that everybody's kind of on the same playing field, whether it's the planning board, the selectmen, the planner, or the comp plan. You have some ideas, you say, okay, well, they're a little concerned about this, so when we write this, we want to be careful that we don't have a lot of impact with big buildings, because there's a lot of residential. So for me, I kind of find it as kind of useful chatter.
Yeah.
It's a framework with flavor.
Yeah, and Phil, to support what Diana said, when I was on the planning board and we were talking about ordinance changes, I was always looking at the comp plan. And I would look and say, guys, you know, the comp plan doesn't, and we've had that discussion on, well, what exactly did they mean? And, you know, Marty was part of the planning board, and on the planning board, he was also, you know, on the comprehensive plan, but I think more of that discussion should have happened back then, and I think this time now, we'll have these discussions here, but I think we're going to have more of those discussions with the planning board also, so that everybody's kind of on the same page, because I know I've questioned it, and I've always looked back to that comp plan and said, we can't do this, or we can, or we, so I think the discussion here is just going to help further discussions when we meet with the planning board.
Not to mention when we have to defend all this to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we should all be talking the
That's
same
the
thing.
biggest thing. And as we had said, defining the framework is based on the details, because if we don't agree that what we're trying to achieve, you know, and there's a detail that really ticks somebody off, then the framework falls apart. So, think of it as a spiral.
It's always going to tick people off.
Something.
Absolutely. And
I'm
the
gonna just put that
objective,
right in the
Right, that should just be like a
But
lead
if,
sentence. into the
right, but
front
if you
line.
looked at, if you
Something
sat,
in here is going to tick you off.
That's right.
and,
Stop reading that.
but you know something, when we've had these discussions, when we take this to to the town meeting, you know something, we're pretty open and honest about the fact that there's always gonna be something within a comp plan that's not gonna set right with somebody, because it's a big document, it's the whole town. But what I've learned from the several comp plans that we've been on is that if you do the comp plan within a vacuum, you take it to town meeting, and it goes down the toilet. When you come back, and you have the chatter, and you listen to what people say, and you've come back and you've addressed the issues that people have had, and you take it back and you've made some appropriate changes, then you usually find that, okay, well, we can live with this. But that kind of chatter kind of has to happen. It sometimes seems like you spend a lot of time on it, but then when we get ready to take this to town meeting, that chatter means that you've already gone through, you've already done the checks and balances that are going to happen at that town meeting. And I think that's a big part of what we're responsible for doing, is because we represent the whole town. Not just as individual landowners or business owners, but we represent the whole town. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we've, turned every rock, dug every hole and checked everything, just to make sure that we've done the checks and balances.
And as I recall, one presentation we did, one of my opening statements was that I guarantee you that everybody in this room is going to find something in this plan they don't like.
Yes.
And, yeah, that included me.
but the goal that we want to achieve, I know we want to do this at the planning board level, is to make sure that the document has something in it that everybody likes.
Yes.
And in most cases, we want to make sure that they like it enough, they're willing to support the document over their objections to other sections. And that's our goal.
Yeah.
So do we want to change that middle sentence?
Just remove the larger or, just say more intense uses that would impact surrounding residential areas or generate.
I think we
Or you want to
want to keep the larger. I
I
would
think
just work
we
it
need
where
to
it says
change the
will not be
sentence.
permitted. I think will be permitted with conditions or something, or maybe add some words to that, but.
it's slightly different.
I'd almost think that would have to stay, and I think you'd have to address the larger in the prior, how you would handle conditional uses in the prior sentence. Because if
Well, the
it's
thing
gonna.
is, it could be a small building or small business, but could have a very intensive effect.
What if we got rid of, what if we started the sentence with uses that would impact the surrounding residential areas or generate significant volumes of traffic, and then ended it with, will be permitted with conditions? So it doesn't specify the size of the use, it's any use that's gonna foul up the residences, then there are conditions.
Use the word may rather than will. Give the planning board an opportunity to, gives them the authority to do it, but they don't have to do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
That shall is the killer.
so uses that would impact the surrounding residential areas and generate significant volumes of traffic may be permitted with conditions. Does that work?
That gives them discretion, that gives them.
And Donna, instead of saying larger one that would, how about that could?
No. Wood is,
It does.
yeah, it does,
It's a finding.
yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting coming up with those plans.
So the sentence where the M5 districts should allow for a mix of small to medium scale retail, going to change that to large scale?
Yeah, small, medium, comma, to large, like we did with the other one,
Yeah.
include all three. So small, comma, medium, comma, to large scale, retail, office, service, low impact manufacturing, and food uses. What did you do? Okay, so and, thank you. That's what we did. And then we're going to get rid of the last phrase. Single and multifamily dwellings will be permitted, period.
We're eliminating, but new single-family subdivision will not be permitted?
Oh, well, I'm sorry, I skipped the not, so we're gonna leave that.
Yes.
Yes.
Leave that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
I think in that area it's probably
it was
appropriate.
a reading error.
It is, we don't, it's not a good place to encourage more residential.
No.
Right.
Okay, I skipped over the not when I was looking at it, so that stays.
And should we, Donna, on this, since we want to utilize, try to utilize some of the back area under development standards, should there be something under development standards about larger buildings in the back? About having different standards for larger buildings in the back? Because if you want to utilize some of that space in the back, either on the right or the left side, you probably would want to hold them to the same standards that you would if they were building right on 111.
The further back away, they can be larger, but they don't look as large from the road, so
Right, but,
we want to somehow put wording in there that encourages that.
right, but how do you make somebody who's gonna build a warehouse in the back, have, reflect the character of the surrounding area? That's a part I'm toying with, is how do you, because they might look at that saying, how do I make a warehouse, look like the character of the area, and if it's in the middle of the woods down there,
Well, it does look like a mobile home.
that's true. Good point, Donna, very good point.
Well, there's one big mobile home.
P5 farm, it's the Giants mobile home.
But it's one of the things that we discussed, that if it was a large building, you know, we want to hold them to the same
What
standard.
if we played with the last sentence? What if we said site conditions, including distance from the arterial, will determine the maximum density and type of development?
I can look at that.
I could do that, that's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, and then-
Remember, I gotta come up with the standards for this stuff.
That's why we pay you the
That's
big
why,
bucks.
thank you.
And do we still want to keep this a pedestrian-oriented approach to development? Be applied, I did do that on 111.
Right.
It's not pedestrian.
Walk fast.
Or become a speed
Right, I
bump.
don't think that should be there.
Or maybe we should also stress connectivity between properties where possible. Since DOT's gonna push us on that one anyways, and it's not a bad idea.
There's so many curb cuts there, I don't know, they're gonna.
Now, remember, when they look at curb cuts, they just don't look at the fact the curb cuts there, they're looking at the trip generation coming from that curb cut.
Yeah, but once it's cut, they can't take it away from
They
you.
can limit you, and they do. Joe is a real tough nut to crack sometimes. As Kate's found out.
Right. Well, let's back up to the pedestrian-oriented approach. I added the phrase where feasible because of the old Alfred Road.
Okay.
Because on the back side, that little, you know, both sides of the Alfred Road, and maybe some sections of the new road, maybe there is some potential down the road for some pedestrian-oriented establishments.
Why not?
You know, I mean, right now it's residences, but again, it may not always be that way.
That's true.
Or it could be that somebody puts in a little, back from 111, one entrance, but a series of small shops, which would be pedestrian oriented.
Or
on
offices.
Bedford Crossing. Offices, sure. You know.
It doesn't hurt to do that. Certainly, one thing we'll be sure that we will stress that to DOT when they start coming to look to make improvements there and try to get them to put in sidewalks for us.
Would you like to be hungry?
No, sidewalks and
It's urban.
places
Don't
like
worry,
that.
this
Places
isn't
like
rural,
this,
that's urban.
That's where
over there.
sidewalks should be.
Besides, you want them to put it in, because they put in the halfway decent sidewalk.
I know, but what
They did it in
the
Ranger.
sidewalk serve is right in that area?
Well, you know.
It's like the sidewalk out by
It's
by
like-
the middle school that goes out to the
Oh,
school.
that's the bridge to nowhere, come on.
Yes, the
I mean,
sidewalk
it's
to
like putting
nowhere.
a sidewalk, you know, halfway down the new road for a half a mile and then stopping it.
Yes,
You'd be surprised how many people would use it. I guarantee you.
no.
You'd be you'd be surprised how many people actually use the sidewalk even in Kennebunk.
Yeah, then you'll end up with a road that's this
And then
narrow,
opposite.
and then you end up with the snow in the sidewalks, you can't use it anyway.
You'd be surprised, Dan, the number of people who walk down Limerick Road with no sidewalk.
You know, if there was a plan to put a sidewalk all the way down, okay, but to tell the DOT that, you know, you're gonna take this piece of property, take over, tee into the new road, and then put sidewalks here. It's in the middle of nowhere. Well, not in the middle of nowhere, but where they walking to?
It's just
Who's
as
walking,
making
where they
comments
walking to,
there.
where they walking from?
Well, even
To
if
me,
it's just play hopscotch on it.
I don't know, maybe it's.
No, seriously, the only reason I
And they'll
take
take
note
property
of the
by
number of
eminent
people
domain.
walking up and down Limerick Road is because every time I screw up and let my dog out, he is suddenly tearing after somebody who was walking down Limerick Road. And it happens.
And a sidewalk would stop that.
No, I'm not saying the
Keep
sidewalk.
them off the road.
I'm just saying that you would, I'm trying to make the point of what Tad said about, you'd be surprised about the number of people who will use a sidewalk. I think he's absolutely right. I think you would be surprised.
I agree with that, but not in that area. I'm thinking, you know, along Route 1.
Well, see, I used to do a
over
walking loop over there, Dan, I'm just saying, I did. I used to go around, oh yeah, quite a little, bit marked out. Yeah.
I would walk
I
on
don't
that 111 New Road area to save my soul.
No, I wouldn't walk on Limerick Road
Again,
to
if
save
we're
myself.
looking down the road,
Chase your dog.
Well, yeah.
you know what an advocate I am of sidewalks.
I know,
If
you
we're-
love them.
If we're looking down the road some 5 to 10 years, and this area actually experiences some commercial development with some smaller places closer to the road, then if sidewalks make sense for those establishments, I think we should encourage them to be there. You know,
I agree with
I mean, one of the insane things about Bedford Crossing is you basically can't go to more than one store without getting in your car and moving it.
Oh,
You know,
that
it's the
is
least
crazy.
thing. I have a field that's more pedestrian oriented than that. So, you know,
And a lot smoother.
why would we want to make those same mistakes here? I think if we're gonna build little commercial centers, you know, whether we have one of them or 5 of them, sidewalks make sense in those places. They truly do.
Well, pedestrian oriented doesn't necessarily mean it has to have sidewalks. Just
Correct.
could
Well,
mean
no,
that
it doesn't.
It could mean that they have little.
I gotta view these as two different
Yeah,
things.
they could
Yeah, I
have
mean,
little.
this doesn't say thou shalt have sidewalks,
But
but
it keeps that word out of there.
Well, what
Which
it
is
does is
crucial.
it gives us some ammo when we're dealing with DOT.
Okay.
yes. Now, what were you saying when I said hold it, when I was trying to get the language for that other sentence, but you were talking about curb cuts and frequency of use.
Oh, that's just, Diane and I were bantering about how DOT likes to make curb, likes to counter you when you say, well, I have an existing curb cut. Is it, well, you don't have a trip generation for that curb cut, you have a trip generation for a smaller curb cut. They like to up the ante all the time.
Well, the counter to that should be that they should look at their curb cut maps for 111 and find out that they're wrong.
Yeah, they respond well to that one.
So that we have no additional sentence from Roger on there?
Explain, the
think
first
it-
sentence, explain what after the comma means.
Significant reduction in lot sizes, lot frontages, and setback just means that basically, even though it's 1 acre zoning, you can configure buildings a little bit more closely and closer to the road or closer to each other as conditions demand.
So it is 1 acre.
No. It's 3 acre, right?
That,
No,
No,
CCM,
no, I think it's 1 acre.
CCM is 1 acre?
yeah,
Oh, yeah, I was looking it up, I was just.
yeah, it's not pretty.
I think that's driven more by existing patterns than it is by lanes, because the soil is, it's tough to get a 1 acre site to work there.
So just a phase decision and perhaps have to get it together.
So if you have fairly good soil, you might be able to do it, because there's no water or sewer there, so you still have to deal with the septic system.
You could always put it in a 20,000 square foot lot with water and sewer.
Okay.
Mm.
Why not?
First you have.
Somebody might want to extend it.
Or we changing that last sentence?
Site conditions and distance from the arterial will determine the maximum density and type of development.
Use of planning board.
Latitude.
Good, yeah, yeah.
Good.
Okay. We're after 9 o'clock, so we should probably draw to a halt here, I would say. We do need to pick a date for the next meeting.
So we can do it 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
22nd?
So today's the 8th, so,
22nd.
Yeah.
The Economic Development Committee meeting that was canceled tonight is rescheduled for the 22nd.
Well, I would have no problem if we met next week on the 15th to get out of the Economic Development Committee's way. Or we could also go to the 29th.
Or there's a selectmen's meeting on the 15th.
Well, that goes, so that puts,
Yeah.
takes us to the 29th. So it'll be 3 weeks
Oh,
instead
yeah,
of 2.
14th 's a holiday. Well, the next meeting is, are we talking about a joint meeting?
I don't think we're quite ready for that, to be honest.
I think you're ahead of the planning board in some ways anyway.
Or they could join us.
Well, they have to have a meeting on the 24th because they have a public hearing on it. So.
Can I just, should we pick a date first? I'm just curious on how we left the extending, or when we're gonna discuss that, or how we're,
But we're not close to done with this, but we'll get back to that.
because is that something that we can bring up with the planning board when we meet jointly?
I don't know, because I don't know where the planning board is. That will get
We're a little
discussed.
early, okay.
Yeah, I have no fear, that will
Okay.
get discussed, and that won't get lost in the shuffle.
So 29?
I don't know, Chad, let's see, look at his calendar.
I'm just staring at it, I'm not doing anything with it. And we can do the 29th. Because our regular meeting is the second Tuesday, right? So that means we will, what's that?
We originally started with the first Tuesday, and then we've just been all over the map because of
Can we
holidays.
start with the first Tuesday?
Yeah,
Okay. So, I mean,
That's different.
so I, yeah, that's a problem. I've got to tell Mary Lou when we're gonna meet, because I gotta fill out the blue sheets well in advance.
but we don't want you to get.
I have to
double
pay,
your bill.
I have to buy a cup, pound of coffee for her.
When do you want the November meeting? Let's put it that way. Okay, I'm working backwards, I'm reverse engineering
The
this
first
meeting.
Tuesday in November is election day, so that's out.
Right, so it would be the 12th.
So it would be,
So the 29th would work, that would give us enough time to do something in between.
okay,
So we're not,
Unless-
bumping into the Economics Development Committee on the 12th?
unless,
Oh, hell.
my hope would be that by the time we got to the November meeting, we would be ready to meet with the planning board jointly. In
That would
which
be-
case, either they can join us or we can join them for a meeting, doesn't
That would be the 14th,
Okay,
and they only do one meeting in November.
yeah, because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because I disappear that week.
And what, is there, you see anything on the agenda as far as, the site board and stuff, development stuff, ranger? All right, but that's just one item.
That'll go right through that one.
Well, I am going to request out of consideration for these committee members that when we have a joint meeting with the planning board, we would be first on the agenda.
Yes. What we would do is, if we need to take action on something, we're gonna have two pending applications. One will probably be dealt with in October, the other one probably not till November. We'll probably have a special meeting for it, maybe the first week, the first Thursday, to clear the decks on it and get prepared to, I think, train these guys, get them all prepared to engage you. I don't think they're ready. I think it'll be a good meeting. I think it'll be a very good meeting. And that would be a good time. We'll dedicate an entire meeting to meeting with you guys. So that would be the 14th, and I would schedule it for you.
Okay, so then we'll meet on the 29th of October, tie up loose ends.
Right.
Based upon the discussion we had last time, I played with a little language, but we, didn't get to that tonight, so I'll type that up as proposed thoughts. We can discuss that next time.
In the interim, Madam Chairman, would you want staff to do any brainstorming or come up with some ideas on how to engage that issue of determining or helping the taxpayers make a decision, or give us information on where they value the agriculture or the rural character of Arundel, come up with some method of asking them to give us their opinions on that issue? Since I think tonight proved that that issue is alive and well, it has not disappeared. There are people here who feel very strongly about it, and I think the citizens do too. And we have to address that issue. We have to address that in concert with the question of what we're gonna do with the 111 corridor.
But I think we need to establish how valuable that corridor is.
Would that be a reasonable thing to approach on election day, since we will
What I
have
was gonna suggest is doing like
part of
Right.
the populace?
straw poll.
Might be, I'm not sure about it being a scientific sample, but, because we're not gonna have a hell of a turnout this November.
Even when you mail it to everyone in town, you don't get a ton of them back.
I know that, I wasn't gonna do that, I was thinking about a focus group kind of thing.
You might even, I would even suggest that,
Focus group is,
Not that kind of focus group.
no, I think you should do it, I think we should do it at the polls and see if we can get people to fill it out at the polls.
When you did the Eastern Trail, we added a town hall, and then they could do it online. We get,
We get a good turnout.
yeah, I mean, when we do it, something like that also. I mean, we could do the polls, but we could also say, leave some questionnaires over at town hall, and also put it up on the website, and people can go. We got some pretty good feedback for the Eastern Trail stuff doing it that
I'll
way.
watch that and,
Yeah.
How do you, not that I expect how people are gonna spend time doing it, but how do you ensure the fact that you're getting the opinion, one opinion from one person and somebody's not filling out 10 of them?
You don't.
Well,
Unless you do a controlled group,
That
like I
inval-
was saying,
that
like a focus
invalidates-
group or something like that, that's a controlled group. Let me come up with several scenarios, several recommendations on ideas, present them and send them out to you.
Okay, well, why couldn't we have them fill out their name if they're filling it out?
Well, some people don't wanna put their name on the survey, and I can respect that too.
Yeah.
But I,
When we did the poll, the survey the last time, we did control it, so it was one man, one vote, so to speak.
I'd also like to, if we're gonna do that, I think that we should also send something to all of the property owners that are within that corridor and get their opinion. It's their property, pay taxes on it, they should have some kind of.
Well, that would be a focus group.
Absolutely. Yep. It's definitely a group, then that's the stakeholders group.
That's a
Kind
stakeholder.
of what you wanna do with the
That's not
DB1.
focus
That's not
group.
focus, that's a
The
stakeholder.
rural means to the
No,
town.
right,
Those are two different
yeah.
issues, I think, to addressing.
Yes.
Just wondering why we would do this. Are we gonna do this again when we're proposing changes to Route 1? Are we gonna have the same discussion and?
The planning board is already planning on doing, focus groups with landowners on the DB1, DB2. Yeah, and I was just gonna say, it'd be basically the same thing that you guys wanna do with, except you would invite them to a meeting.
For the landowners, but that's the stakeholders, we're looking for more of a broad brush attitudinal survey from the townspeople.
Right.
Very focused, but, yeah, you don't leave out the stakeholders in this,
Right.
for obvious reasons, which you well know. Stakeholders have always got to be major participants. But, and we keep hearing, we have evidence that this is important, we need to refocus that, instead of being in very generic terms that yes, we like the rural character, but where? What character?
I struggle
What
with,
location? What if we do this and this? How will that, will you react to that? Will we lose something? I'll play with that.
I struggle with, on the planning board and on selectmen's meeting, Route 111 being business, a lot of that comes from the folks that are in the business community today. I'm curious as to how the rest of the town, the residents, how they feel.
Right.
Because, I know the business community would, nothing more than have that all business.
They like log cabin.
But this town
business,
is,
too.
got a lot more residences, and I'd like to get the heartbeat from that one.
We've got a few vocals, folks who are interested in the tax issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, I don't know if the cult's not.
Interested to see how you frame these questions.
That's what I would like to see,
Holy
yeah.
crow.
I know, this is gonna be real interesting.
Are you kind of okay now?
What?
No, are you gonna yeah. 'cause
Oh, I'm
I have
asking
a
about
question.
you guys, yeah, I'm not just gonna go out there as a cowboy and do it by
gonna be-
myself. Man in the street thing, yeah, right, I wanna be the subject of another post article, right?
Typically, why would that come from the planning board?
Oh, we can come from the planning board, this is through this group,
Yeah.
it's not through the planning board.
Okay.
For the CCN.
For the corner, the Route 111 corridor, the Route 111 corridor is a lightning rod.
Yeah,
It
that.
really is. And on both sides of the issue, let's attack it. And this is the group to do it, not the planning board, leave the planning board out.
The planning board will do the DB1 and DB2.
And they'll implement whatever we come out of this, but, the planning board hates dealing with this issue, and it really belongs in this,
Yeah.
in the lap of this group here.
Okay, so we're gonna meet on the 29th, which is Tuesday. And then we will shoot for a joint meeting with the planning board on November 14th.
We'll do it.
Good deal. I'm going to adjourn unless it's something
I'd like to
else.
have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, that was with enthusiasm.
I wanted to make sure they heard.
We heard that.
They couldn't see you say it though, because we're out of camera range. So 9:23, Madam Secretary.
I still have to watch this again.
We didn't
I
vote.
didn't take notes through the
Well-
whole thing. It's really very broad.
We're a fun group.
The problem, what I can hear, yeah, the problem is that the last one, I couldn't hear it. So I'm lip reading.
Hey, Donna, we didn't vote.
What? You adjourn?
An adjournment.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Virtue of.
By virtue